In the small town of Murrells Inlet, South Carolina, 16-year-old Nick Marshall had always been fascinated by the secrets that lay hidden beneath the surface of the nearby rivers. From a young age, he would spend hours exploring the waterways, searching for any signs of the ancient past. Nick's father, Jim Marshall, had been the one to introduce him to the world of diving and fossil hunting. Jim had been an avid diver in his youth, and he would often regale Nick with tales of his adventures in the murky depths of South Carolina's rivers. As Nick grew older, his passion for fossil hunting only intensified. He would spend every spare moment he had exploring the rivers and streams, searching for any signs of prehistoric life. His most prized finds were the fossilized teeth of the Megalodon, an enormous shark that had once ruled the oceans millions of years ago. Nick's passion soon turned into a profitable side hustle. He began selling his finds on eBay and quickly gained a reputation as one of the go-to sources for authentic Megalodon teeth and other prehistoric fossils. His business was thriving, and he was able to save up enough money to invest in better diving equipment and expand his search radius. However, as Nick's reputation grew, so did the competition. More and more fossil hunters began flocking to the rivers of South Carolina, hoping to cash in on the lucrative market for prehistoric artifacts. The once quiet waterways became crowded with divers, all jostling for the best spots and the most valuable finds. Nick knew that he needed to find new hunting grounds if he wanted to stay ahead of the competition. He pored over old maps and consulted with local experts, hoping to find a river that had been overlooked by the other hunters. That is when he remembered the stories his father used to tell him about Cooper River. Jim had always spoken of the river with a mix of reverence and fear, describing it as a place of untold riches and hidden dangers. He would tell Nick about the massive alligators that lurked in the depths and the treacherous currents that could sweep even the most experienced diver away in an instant. Despite his father's warnings, Nick could not shake the feeling that Cooper River held the key to his future as a fossil hunter. He knew that if he could brave the dangers and uncover the river's secrets, he would be able to take his business to the next level and cement his reputation as one of the greatest fossil hunters of his generation. As the sun began to set over Murrells Inlet, Nick sat at his desk, studying a faded old map of Cooper River. He had found the map tucked away in a dusty corner of his father's study, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement as he traced his finger along the winding path of the river. The map was covered in strange symbols and cryptic notes, most of which Nick couldn't decipher. But there was one marking that stood out to him, a small X that had been scrawled in the margin right next to a bend in the river. Nick knew that the X must have been placed there by his father, and he couldn't help but wonder what secrets it might reveal. He had heard the stories of Cooper River's hidden treasures, and he knew that if anyone had been able to find them, it would have been his father. As Nick studied the map, his mind began to wander back to the last conversation he had had with his father about Cooper River. It had been a few years ago, back when Jim was still driving trucks for a living and only home on weekends. Nick had been excitedly telling his father about his latest dive in the local rivers and how he had found a particularly large shark tooth that had earned him a hefty sum on eBay. Jim had listened intently, a proud smile on his face as he heard about his son's achievements. But then, almost as an afterthought, Jim had mentioned Cooper River. "You know, son," he had said, "I used to dive in Cooper River back in my day. It was a treacherous place, full of hidden dangers and territorial beasts. But it was also a place of untold riches, where the bravest and most skilled divers could find treasures beyond their wildest dreams." Nick had been intrigued by his father's words, and he had pressed him for more details, but Jim had simply shaken his head and told Nick to stay away from Cooper River. "Promise me, son," he had said, "promise me that you'll stick to the safer waters. Cooper River is not a place for the faint of heart, and I don't want to see you get hurt chasing after some fool's treasure." Nick had reluctantly agreed to his father's request, but he had never been able to shake the allure of Cooper River. And now, with the map in front of him and the promise of untold riches waiting to be discovered, he knew that he had to take the risk. He spent the next few days preparing for the dive, gathering his equipment and studying the map in greater detail. He knew that he would need to be at the top of his game if he was going to survive the treacherous waters and uncover the secrets that lay hidden beneath the surface. Finally, on a clear Saturday morning, Nick loaded up his truck with his diving gear and set off towards Cooper River. He had told his mother that he was heading to his usual diving spots, not wanting to worry her with the truth of his destination. As he drove along the winding roads that led to the river, Nick couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation building in his chest. He knew that he was about to embark on the greatest adventure of his life, and he was determined to make the most of it. As Nick arrived at Cooper River, he was struck by the eerie silence that seemed to hang over the water. The river was much wider and more turbulent than he had anticipated, and he could see the dark shapes of alligators lurking just beneath the surface. He knew that he would have to be careful as he navigated the river, but he was determined not to let fear hold him back. He had come too far to turn back now, and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Nick launched his kayak into the water and began paddling upstream, fighting against the strong currents that threatened to sweep him away. He kept a close eye on his map, trying to match the landmarks he saw with the cryptic symbols that his father had scrawled on the page. After what felt like hours of paddling, Nick finally reached the spot that his father had marked with an X. He could feel his heart racing with excitement as he prepared to dive into the murky depths, knowing that he was about to uncover a treasure beyond his wildest dreams. As he slipped into the water, Nick was immediately struck by the strange sense of calm that seemed to envelop him. Despite the danger that lurked all around him, he felt a sense of purpose and determination that he had never experienced before. He swam deeper and deeper into the river, his flashlight cutting through the murky water like a beacon in the darkness. He could feel the weight of the water pressing down on him from all sides, but he refused to let it slow him down. And then, just as he was beginning to lose hope, he saw it. A glint of something shiny in the distance, half buried in the riverbed. His heart leaped with excitement as he swam closer, realizing that he had finally found what he had been searching for. It was an old and massive shark tooth, larger than any he had ever seen before. Nick could hardly believe his eyes as he reached out to touch it, feeling the smooth surface of the fossilized enamel beneath his fingertips. He quickly set to work, using his tools to carefully extract the tooth from the riverbed. It was a delicate process, but Nick's hands were steady and sure as he worked. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the tooth was free. Nick held it up to the light, marveling at its size and beauty. He knew that he had just made the discovery of a lifetime, and he couldn't wait to share it with the world. But as he turned to make his way back to the surface, Nick suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He could sense that something was watching him from the shadows, and he knew that he needed to get out of the water as quickly as possible. He began swimming towards the shore, his heart pounding in his chest as he tried to outpace whatever was lurking behind him. He could hear the sound of something large moving through the water, getting closer and closer with every passing second. Just as he was about to reach the shore, Nick felt something grab his leg with incredible force. He cried out in pain and fear, thrashing wildly in an attempt to free himself from the creature's grasp. But it was no use. The creature was too strong, and Nick could feel himself being dragged deeper and deeper into the murky depths of Cooper River. And then, everything went black. When Nick failed to return home that evening, his mother Linda began to worry. It wasn't like him to stay out so late without calling, and she knew that something must be wrong. She tried calling his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She called his friends, but none of them had seen or heard from him all day. Finally, in desperation, she called the police. The authorities launched a massive search operation, combing the rivers and streams where Nick usually went diving. They brought in helicopters and search dogs, and hundreds of volunteers joined in the effort to find the missing teenager. Early in the search, Nick's kayak was discovered banked upriver from the boat launch on Cooper River, where he had initially set out on his diving expedition. The kayak appeared to be undamaged and showed no signs of a struggle, adding to the mystery of Nick's disappearance. Despite an extensive search of the area surrounding the kayak, no other trace of Nick was found. No footprints, no shreds of clothing, no signs of a campsite or any other evidence that might have pointed to his whereabouts. The discovery of the kayak, seemingly untouched and with no clues to Nick's fate, only deepened the mystery surrounding his disappearance. Had he been attacked by one of the predators that lurked beneath the surface of the water? Or was there something more sinister at play, something that defied explanation? As the search continued, the authorities began to fear the worst. The Cooper River was known for its treacherous currents and hidden dangers, and many a skilled diver had met their end in its murky depths. But even as hope began to fade, Nick's family and friends refused to give up, clinging to the desperate belief that he might still be out there somewhere, waiting to be found. As hours turned into days, and days turned into weeks, there was still no sign of Nick. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, leaving behind no trace of his whereabouts. The only clue that the authorities had to go on was a lucky find by a couple kayaking Cooper River. Nick's GoPro camera, which had been found washed up on the banks, almost a mile downstream from the boat launch. The authorities were baffled by the footage from Nick's GoPro camera. They had no idea what had grabbed him or what had caused the camera to malfunction so suddenly. Some speculated that he had been attacked by an alligator or some other predator, while others believed that he had simply gotten tangled in the debris on the riverbed and drowned. It was unclear. The video cut out prior to hearing a brief muffled cry for help before the camera shutting off. Prior to that, he appeared to have found something before moving frantically towards shore. His mother refused to give up hope. She knew that her son was a skilled and experienced diver, and she couldn't believe that he would have met such a tragic end. She organized her own search parties, recruiting anyone who was willing to help her scour the rivers and streams for any sign of her missing son. As the official search efforts began to wind down each evening, Linda would find herself consumed by the desperate need to find answers. Night after night, she would set out on Nick's kayak, navigating the treacherous waters of Cooper River in the hopes of uncovering some clue to her son's fate. The darkness and the eerie stillness of the river at night only added to the sense of foreboding that hung over Linda's solitary searches. The beam of her flashlight would pierce the murky depths, illuminating the twisted branches and submerged logs that seemed to reach out like grasping hands. But it was the alligators that truly terrified her. They were everywhere, their eyes glinting in the darkness like malevolent stars. Some were small, barely larger than a grown man, but others were massive, their armored hides scarred from countless battles. Linda had never been comfortable around the alligators, but now, alone on the river at night, she felt a primal fear that threatened to overwhelm her. She knew that if one of the larger predators were to attack, she would have little chance of survival. One particularly harrowing night, as Linda navigated a treacherous stretch of rapids, she found herself face to face with a monstrous alligator. The creature was twice as long as her kayak, and its massive jaws were lined with jagged teeth. For a heart-stopping moment, the alligator and Linda stared each other down, the only sound the rushing of the water and the pounding of Linda's heart. She knew that she was no match for the predator, that her flimsy kayak would be little protection against its crushing jaws. But then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the alligator sank back beneath the surface, leaving Linda shaken but unharmed. It was as if the creature had sensed her desperation, her need to be in his part of the river, and had decided to spare her. From that moment on, Linda's searches took on a new urgency. She knew that she was risking her life every time she set out on the river, but she also knew that she could not rest until she had found some trace of Nick. As Linda turned her kayak around, preparing to head back to shore, something caught her eye. In the distance, she noticed the large alligator's tail whipping through the air as it disappeared into a dense thicket of grass and rock along the riverbank. Linda's heart raced as she realized that this must be the creature's lair, the place where it retreated after its hunts. A sense of curiosity and desperation washed over her. She knew that if there were any clues to be found about her son's disappearance, they would be hidden within the depths of that lair. But as much as she wanted to investigate further, Linda knew that she had already pushed herself to the limit tonight. The emotional toll of her solitary search, combined with the heart-stopping encounter with the monstrous alligator, had left her exhausted and shaken. She understood that venturing into the beast's lair alone, without proper preparation or support, would be a foolish and dangerous endeavor. With a heavy heart, Linda made the difficult decision to return home for the night. She knew that she would need to regroup, to gather her strength and resources before attempting to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within the alligator's den. As she paddled back toward shore, Linda's mind raced with possibilities. She knew that she would need help if she were to have any chance of finding out what had happened to her son. She would need someone with experience, someone who understood the dangers of the river and the creatures that called it home. When Linda pulled into her driveway, she found Jim waiting up for her, his face etched with concern and frustration. He had discovered that she had been exploring the treacherous waters of Cooper River alone at night, using their son's kayak. Furious but understanding, Jim listened intently as Linda recounted her harrowing experiences and the discovery of the alligator's lair. Desperate for answers and determined to uncover the truth behind their son's disappearance, Jim knew that he couldn't let Linda face this ordeal alone. Despite the years that had passed since his last dive, he dusted off his old diving gear, knowing that his expertise and support would be crucial in navigating the dangers that lay before them. Together, Linda and Jim planned to venture into the heart of the beast's lair, the same area where Linda had encountered the massive alligator during her solo search. As they approached the site, Jim took the lead, his years of experience guiding them through the murky depths. The underwater world was eerie and silent, the only sound being the gentle hum of their breathing apparatus. They navigated through the labyrinth of submerged caves until they reached an opening where they could breathe. Their hearts were pounding as they searched for any sign of their missing son. As they pressed deeper into the underwater cavern, Linda and Jim stumbled upon a grim and heart-wrenching discovery. There, scattered among the rocks and debris, were the partial remains of their beloved son, Nick. Overwhelmed by grief and shock, their anguished cries were captured by the unblinking eye of Linda's GoPro camera. But their harrowing journey was far from over. As they searched for a way out of the beast's domain, Linda and Jim found themselves face to face with the monstrous alligator that had haunted their nightmares. In a desperate struggle for survival, they fought against the creature, their screams echoing through the underwater caves. News of the couple's disappearance became a desperate race against time, as their friends and family had a good idea where to start looking. The authorities scoured the river and its underwater caves, hoping to find any clue that might lead them to Linda and Jim. It was a team of divers who finally discovered Linda's GoPro camera lying at the bottom of the river. The device, it seemed, had been through a harrowing ordeal of its own. Forensic analysis would later reveal that the camera had been subjected to the harsh digestive process of an alligator, its protective casing scarred and corroded by the creature's powerful stomach acids. The footage from Linda's camera provided a chilling glimpse into their final moments. The authorities would later reveal that the footage from this point on would not be released to the public, leaving the final moments of Linda and Jim's ordeal shrouded in mystery. In the wake of the Marshall family's tragic end, the authorities launched a massive hunt for the monstrous alligator that had been captured on Linda's GoPro footage. Teams of experienced hunters and trappers scoured the river and its surrounding areas, determined to locate and capture the beast. As part of their search efforts, the authorities discovered the underwater cave system that Linda and Jim had explored in their desperate attempt to find their son. Within the murky depths of the cavern, they made a grim and unsettling discovery: the remains of not just Nick, Jim, and Linda, but also 3 other individuals who had been the subjects of cold cases in the area. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, raising questions about the true nature of the beast that lurked within Cooper River. Despite their best efforts, however, the alligator itself seemed to have vanished without a trace. No sightings were reported, and no tracks or signs of the creature's presence could be found in the days and weeks following the tragic events. It was as if the beast had simply melted back into the murky depths of the river, leaving behind only the haunting footage captured from a camera as proof of its existence. For those who had known Linda, Jim, and their son, the true horror of their story lay not in the mystery of the creature that had taken them, but in the unimaginable grief and loss that they had endured. They had ventured into the heart of darkness, driven by love and desperation, only to be consumed by the very secrets they had sought to uncover. And as the legend of Cooper River's monster continued to grow, their story would forever serve as a reminder of the terrible price that the search for truth can sometimes demand, and the way in which even the strongest of bonds can be torn asunder by the cruelest twists of fate. And so, the legend of the Cooper River alligator remains a mystery to this day, a haunting reminder of the untamed wilderness that lurks just beneath the surface of our world. The story of the Marshall family and the other unfortunate souls claimed by the beast serves as a cautionary tale, urging us to respect the power and unpredictability of nature and to cherish the bonds we share with our loved ones, for we never know when they might be torn away from us. As always, if you found this video intriguing, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating tales of mystery and the unexplained. And remember, the next time you find yourself near the murky waters of Cooper River or any other untamed wilderness, take a moment to pause and reflect on the incredible and often terrifying wonders that our world still holds. Until next time, thank you for watching.